Regarding Srila Prabhupada's request, what if the GBC had faithfully conveyed Srila Prabhupada's request to all the devotees? What if Ramesvar had come back to the US not with the purpose and intent to prevent us from knowing what Srila Prabhupada wanted, but what if he had come back to inform us all of Srila Prabhupada's really true and higher inner desire, which was that we all come to India to be by Prabhupada's side? What if he had come back to help organize sending all of us to be with Srila Prabhupada? What if all the book distributors, the main income earners for the temples at that time, had all left the temples and gone to India? Yes, thousands of devotees would have gone. And all the income earners, the book distributors would have gone. And yes, soon there would have been no more income to pay the mortgages and the bills. The deity worship would have been affected. In fact, if all the devotees had gone, the deity worship would have temporarily been stopped. There would have been no one to hold the Sunday feast. The temples would have been empty and locked up. So weren't Ramesvar's and the other GBC members' concerns legitimate and their actions justified? Weren't such actions actually needed? And thus, didn't they really, for a fact, save ISKCON, like Ramesvar believed? Let me be searingly direct. Srila Prabhupada was no fool. He is thousands of times more intelligent than Ramesvar, Tamal Krsna, Satsvarup, and the whole GBC and all his disciples combined. Any half-intelligent, common, ordinary man can understand that if all the devotees left their services and their temples and went to India, they couldn't stay there for very long without financially hurting the mission or affecting the deity worship. I mean, after all, even Ramesvar could figure that out. Why didn't these men give Srila Prabhupada the credit that he had at least as much intelligence as they did? He was just as aware that there were mortgages on the properties and that the devotees who distributed his books brought in the majority of the money needed to pay the temple mortgages and bills. He was fully aware that if everyone left their temples, that the deities would be temporarily inconvenienced and that the income would cease. Why did Ramesvar and the other GBC men assume that Srila Prabhupada lacked even the basic common intelligence to understand this? Once everyone had come to Srila Prabhupada's Once everyone had come, Srila Prabhupada's desire to have seen and been surrounded by his loving disciples would have been fulfilled. My own father, for example, he had 3 children. And when he was on his deathbed, my sister came from Arkansas. My brother came from Oregon, and I was nearby in Los Angeles. We all came to see him. But my brother had his own business, so he could only stay a weekend. The same with my sister, who had 2 daughters who were in school at the time. It isn't that everyone came and stayed for who knows how long until he passed away. No, we all came. We all said our last goodbyes. We all got to see him. He got to see all of us one last time. Then we all went back to our own duties. And a week later or 2, my father passed on. Srila Prabhupada wasn't a fool like these men thought he was. So why did these leading GBC men assume he was? That very question casts a lot of warranted doubt about these men's ability to be the only ones who would decide what path Srila Prabhupada had wanted us to take regarding the Rtvik Guru issue. Can we trust the decisions those very same men made at this very same time period as to what path ISKCON was to have taken? Originally, when I began to work on this presentation, it wasn't even in my mind to include anything at all about this incident. But then as I was writing the script and wound up telling my own story of how I started to research this issue on my own, as you will see later on as I present my story, this incident came to haunt me 20 years later it strongly affected me when I began to study the Rtvik Ras issue 20 years after Prabhupada had left. At first, I just mentioned this incident as to how it had affected me at that time. But then, after I turned to Srila Prabhupada and I begged his mercy to give me the ability to make this his presentation, I wound up totally rewriting the scripts. And when I got to this event, it took time, but as I continued to pray to Srila Prabhupada for his guidance, I slowly realized that this event not only affected me so strongly, but that it also affected His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. And I came to the conclusion that he wanted me to tell this story because he wanted his followers to know what actually happened. For historic reasons, this must be documented and the story be told. But also out of justice to Srila Prabhupada, his followers must be aware of what happened. The current GBC need to take the needed action as a GBC body, as a governing body, to admit to the past misdeeds of their own members. The current GBC need to own up to the offenses that were made and publicly apologize to Srila Prabhupada. They need to not only beg for Srila Prabhupada's forgiveness, but also to all of his disciples and followers who were affected by those lies and actions of these GBC members in 1977. I'm going to say more about this later when this issue comes up later on as I'm telling my story. Hare Krishna.